Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Karina Cruz from Simplify Media, the parent to EHS Daily Advisor. Today's session is Quiet Quitting and the Connection to Psychological Safety and Overall Well-Being, sponsored by our friends from Avetta. Thank you so much for making this session possible. Before we start today's program, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. You can find a full list of these housekeeping items in the resource widget, which will help you familiarize yourself with today's platform. There is a widget called the Media Player, which will allow you to control the volume of today's session. So please note there is no dial-in number for attendees, and the audio is streaming directly from your computer speakers, so be sure they're turned up and on. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical errors. If your technical issue does not resolve, please enter a question into the Q&A widget, and our team will gladly assist you. Speaking of that Q&A widget, we will be hosting a live Q&A session at the end of today's event, so I hope you all came with questions for our speaker. You can submit them there. Okay, to kick off today's presentation, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Danielle Posa, founder of Workplace Wellbeing Advisors, Vice Chair of Global Wellness Institute's Workplace Wellbeing Initiative, and founder of the Wellbeing Hacker. Danielle Posa has 13 plus years of experience in employee engagement, well-being, leadership development, and business consulting. And while her focus is on improving workplaces, her bigger mission involves making well-being the primary measurement of success in society. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Danielle. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everybody who's joining. I see we have quite a few people. It looks like about 170 people. Thank you as well to the sponsor, Avetta, for making this happen. Obviously, this is a very important topic, or at least one that's getting a lot of buzz these days. Just a quick note, we just realized that the title slide here says quit quitting instead of quiet quitting. So sorry about that, but I think we all want quitting to quit. So maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's actually pretty accurate. So I'm going to get started. There's definitely a lot we're going to get into here. First and foremost, I'm just going to help kind of define what quiet quitting is. I've done kind of some extensive research on this, trying to figure it out myself. And depending on what you read, there are different definitions of it. So I'm going to just do my best to help clarify for everybody. But more importantly, we're going to talk about some of the root causes of quiet quitting, and then what to do about it. And really, when we talk about what to do about it, it will be more so from a sustainable standpoint, like not just what do we do about quiet quitting, but how do we address, this whole kind of movement of quitting that we're seeing, which is way more important than just trying to keep up with the trends, which I'm sure we are all kind of sick of having to do at this point, since it's been kind of one after another. So to get started, just to kind of start, I read this in an Adam Grant blog, and I love Adam Grant. And he said that, the critics have been calling this old wine in a new and confusing bottle in terms of this term. So would love to hear in the chat, if that's kind of where you're at with quiet quitting, if this just feels like another term that's, the same thing in new packaging. So in order to kind of dispel some of the confusion, I have my go-to resources for, where I look to the best kind of advice and research. So the things that you'll hear today come mostly from Gallup, McKinsey, and Adam Grant. And the Wall Street Journal also had a very notable article written on quiet quitting as well that got a lot of attention. So I put that up here as well. But first, would love to just hear from some of you so that I'm not just, talking to myself the whole time. In the chat, please tell me just why you're here. Why do you care about this topic? Is there anything specific that you are seeing or hearing within your organization, or a specific challenge you're having in regards to quiet quitting? Are you just kind of curious about this topic and just want to make sure that you know what it is? Please do go ahead and share that in the chat. Let me see. Okay. And Michelle, do you see anything in the chat populating? I just want to make sure that I have this set up. Feel free to just like message me. Oh, here we go. Now I have it. Sorry about that. Okay. Seeing some of the answers populate here. Okay, great. Some of our managers don't believe this is a real problem. That's an interesting comment, to be fully informed on the topic. Let's see. Interested in the topic, would like more awareness. Okay, thank you. Keep those coming. I would love to just, keep seeing your answers there. And then my next question is, are any of you just annoyed at the quiet quitters? Are you, or have you heard about this topic and it just bothers you? Just the idea. Would love to have just some honest reactions there. If this is just bothering you, that the quiet quitters exist to begin with. So please be honest and type that in the chat as well. Any bold responses? Yes, very annoyed. Okay, curious especially about the reasons why or motivations to quit. No, not annoyed, usually justified. Of course, I'm annoyed by, yeah, so it's interesting to see these responses because I have seen that there's been quite a wide spectrum of how people feel about this idea of quiet quitting. Some people feel like it's totally valid and validated and understand the perspective of this group. Others just feel like, employees have no right to be just kind of keeping it to themselves and not doing, or just like slacking. I see as someone mentioned about picking up the slack. Thank you. We used to call it lazy. How's it different? Great. These are great. I love these comments because we're definitely going to hit on all of this, but please do keep them coming. We'd love to even read these after and see kind of where you guys are at. Okay. So I want to start a little bit on a little bit more of a broader note, just looking at overall engagement trends. So regardless of like what label we're putting on things, when you look at employee engagement, this is focused on the US, but if you look at employee engagement, overall, the engagement actually reached an all-time high right before the start of the pandemic. And then since the pandemic, we've seen a decline in this group of engaged employees. Now, one thing that's important to understand first is, what does employee engagement actually mean? Because this is another term that has been defined quite a few different ways. Gallup, this comes from Gallup, and Gallup's definition of engagement is to have an emotional connection to your work and also to your workplace. There's like an enthusiasm that engaged workers have, but it's that emotional connection to the work that drives that engagement. Gallup breaks down employees into 3 different categories. The top category is the engaged employees, those that I just said, that roll up their sleeves coming to work. And the bottom is the actively disengaged group. The actively disengaged employees are the ones who they're disgruntled, they're unhappy with their work, and they're active about it, meaning they actually talk to people about it. They might share with their employees why they're unhappy. They might complain about the company. So there is an active component to their disengagement. There's a middle group that's called the not engaged. And this is what Gallup actually considers to be the quiet quitters, because these are the people that they're not emotionally connected to their work. They're not super actively disengaged about it, but they just kind of show up and don't have, they're just kind of showing up, waiting for the day to end, don't have any type of emotional connection, really just seeing it as a paycheck. Now, I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. I think quiet quitting really is a subset of that group. I wouldn't say that not engaged group is all quiet quitters. We're going to get into it in depth, but that's how kind of Gallup looks at it, is like there's this middle ground of people that are just kind of resigned at work. They're not really into it, not totally against it, but just kind of showing up every day. Now, these trends, if you see, the engaged group is declining and that actively disengaged group is increasing. Now, these trends are related to clarity of expectations. This is as defined by Gallup. This is because employees are not feeling very clear about what's expected of them. They're not getting opportunities to learn and grow. They're not feeling cared about as a person, and they don't have that connection to the organization's mission and purpose. So that's why kind of this engagement trend is starting to fall, or get worse, I should say. So what is quiet quitting, and what is it not? I did want to show you a TikTok video, but I can't get the video to work here. But there's this trend, really, if you don't know, this whole idea of quiet quitting really started as a trend on TikTok. I am not really on TikTok, not sure if everybody on this call is, but this is really where it originated. So I watch a lot of the videos. This is a very funny video, which we can actually pop in the chat or send to you guys afterwards, but it kind of paints the picture of what it looks like. And in this video, Veronica kind of, says, hey, I show up, I do my job, and I go home. And it's really like not that, it's not that crazy of a concept. And she kind of makes the point that I'm not really doing anything wrong. I'm actually handling the things that I'm supposed to do at my work, but I don't do much more. I don't go way beyond that, and I don't stress myself out about it. So I do encourage you to check out some of the videos on TikTok just to kind of help paint the picture of what this looks like, because I do know it can get confusing with the different terminology and stuff, but if you go to TikTok, it'll give you kind of a sense of what this all looks and sounds like. So first and foremost, what really makes quiet quitting different than the rest of these? We've all heard of the Great Resignation. It's been called the Big Quit, the Great Attrition, the Great Reset, the Great Reshuffle. At the basic, element of this, what is the key distinction between all of these and quiet quitting? Any thoughts? Just type it in the chat. What makes quiet quitting different than these other trends? Just watching. Any thoughts on that? Okay, I don't see anything yet. So basically the short answer is that the quiet quitters are not actually quitting, right? So these are all indications of people who have actually quit. But then the bigger implication of it is that quiet quitting, the thing that makes this an important trend to pay attention to, is that quiet quitting really addresses the mental state that's showing up before the actual act of quitting, right? So the challenging part about the Great Resignation and all of these people leaving and changing jobs is that they've left already, and there's nothing we can do about those people. Quiet quitting, and to me, the reason why this is an important phenomenon to be interested in, is because these are the people that said they considered quitting, but then they said, you know what, I'm actually just going to stay and ride it out, especially maybe with the recession looming. I'm not going to go and quit my job. So there is a mental state that exists within the organization that you can actually do something about before these people actually go and quit. So if you think about this kind of like, I just put this together as like a retention scale. On the far right, you've got people that are not just committed, but they're actually loyal to the company. They're enthusiastic about the work that they do, and they feel a sense of like, oh, I really love this company. I really love the people I work with, or I really respect the leadership. I can see myself here for a long time. I see, some kind of growth trajectory. So those are the people, they're not just engaged, but they're actually loyal. There's something about them that makes them feel like, I really actually want to stay here. Quitting's not even on my mind. It's not even something that I think about. I really see myself here. Committed's that next step down, because you might have engaged employees who really love their work, but maybe with a higher paycheck or a bigger sense of purpose or a better manager, they still will consider leaving. Then you have some people that are in the middle. They, maybe they're happy and content at work. They're getting what they want from their job. They don't love it. They don't hate it, but they're not having any particular issues. This is where I feel like you can have some people who are not engaged, but they're not necessarily quiet quitting either. So this is where it gets kind of, it starts to blend. Quiet quitting is really the next step before quitting for a lot of, for this group. So quiet quitters are really people who have thought about quitting, but then said, well, you know what, rather than quit, let me just stay. And instead of overextending myself or going above and beyond, let me just stay. Nothing's, like if I kind of just make work for me, set my boundaries, just put my head down, do my work, then that's enough. And hey, if something better comes along, I might jump at that opportunity. And if I'm fired, it won't be the worst thing in the world. But this is the part that is kind of distinct from just not engaged, because these people do kind of have this feeling of, hey, I might quit, and if I were to leave or if I were fired, it wouldn't really be the end of the world. So taking it a step further, sorry, hold on, here we go. How many people, so according to McKinsey, how many people kind of fit this group where they have quitting on their mind? So McKinsey just recently did a survey saying that 40% of people are still thinking about leaving their position in the next 3 to 6 months. So this was fairly recent, meaning that people still have this in their mind, even with the potential recession coming. The key here to me, though, is that it says that they're thinking about leaving their positions. It's not to say that they're definitely going to, but the fact is that quitting is on their mind. There is some form of dissatisfaction, which tells us we have to figure out what's going on with people. Why are they so, unhappy? What will really cause them to not even have thinking on their mind? What will actually cause them to be, really engaged and committed to their work and committed to the organization? And that's really the level of thinking that we have to put to this whole thing, is like, what can we make people just not even be thinking about quitting that will make them really happy and feel like they want to stay, somewhere for a long time? Now, to me, the reason why you have to really pay attention to this is because understanding this now is really important, because as we enter the recession, it is presumed that there's less, people are less likely to actually quit, since they'll be afraid that they won't, find another job. And therefore, the number of quiet quitters or dissatisfied employees might actually increase within your organization. And that can create this viral effect that happens on the company's culture, right? Because when you have people that are just not really excited about, what they're doing, or considering leaving, that obviously has a positive impact on the culture. Now, I will address the fact this doesn't mean that you want to go and try to find these people and fire these people. Does not mean that at all. So I want to just say that. I'm going to mention that a bit more in the future. But it is important to know who these people are and understand them on a deeper level, so you can kind of get to the root of this issue. So one of the best definitions that actually I found on quiet quitting was on dictionary.com. And I like this because it kind of broke down the specific elements of quiet quitting. So quiet quitting is an informal term, so not a scientific term. That's why there's no real definition on this. But it's this informal term for the practice of reducing the amount of effort one devotes to one's job, such as stopping the completion of any tasks that are not explicitly stated in the job description. The term also implies that this is kind of done secretly. Obviously, nobody's really going to their boss saying, like, hey, I'm not going to do anything, above what's explicitly stated in my job description. This is kind of happening in the background. Then it's also used to refer to the different methods of reducing productivity or the amount of work one performs. This is important because for some people, quiet quitting does mean that they're really doing the very bare minimum in terms of what they need to get done throughout the day, meaning that they're not trying to tackle everything on their to-do list. They're just trying to figure out what's kind of the basics that I need to get done just so I don't get fired. But other people in this group are just saying that I just put really hard edges around how much time I work. I used to stay in the office until 6, 7 o'clock. Now I'm reducing my productivity by just, leaving the office at 5. We're going to talk about why that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. So just keep that in mind for now. But the point here is that there's a few different methods that people kind of have in mind with reducing that productivity or just the amount of work that they're doing. Another piece of this is that it involves the rejection of pressure or the expectation to go above and beyond. So in a lot of these videos, actually what you can see on like TikTok is that people will say, I just realized that I can just do my job without and just give up on obsessing over things or having too much anxiety over over my workload. Just kind of like refusing to give in to that extra pressure, just saying that, hey, well, if I were to quit, part of the reason why I would consider quitting is to get rid of this feeling of pressure, to get rid of these feelings of anxiety. So then what they say to themselves, well, what if I just don't quit, but I just do that I just say, hey, I'm not going to get upset about these things anymore. I'm not going to worry about them anymore. I'm not going to have these high ambitions that maybe, or these like career expectations that I'm just not seeing come to fruition. So they kind of just given up on, that mentality. And this is part of where they're setting a different type of boundary for themselves. It's not just a time boundary in terms of saying I'm leaving work at 5, but this like boundary around, I'm going to actually tell myself like, I'm no longer going to let myself get stressed out and get this level of anxiety from work. And then it's also discussed in the context of worker dissatisfaction, burnout, disengagement, and the trend of deprioritizing work in favor of other aspects of their lives. So quiet quitters also just say, hey, you know what? Forget this. I really want to make sure that I'm prioritizing the things that I care about outside of work. So there's just this deprioritization of work, of saying, you know what? Work isn't the be all end all of everything. And this isn't really where I shouldn't be obsessing over this. I should be focusing on other aspects of my life. So there's a blend here of a combination of like a healthy aspect to quiet quitting and an unhealthy aspect. So just kind of keep that in mind for now. So I think a big distinction of the quiet quitters is that there's this like, what's the point mentality. So these people often feel like it's no longer worth it to go above and beyond. They might have been your engaged employees. They might have been the employees who were super excited, who were the top performers, who did feel like they had all this potential in the organization. And then something, happened professionally or personally that told them, you know what, it's not worth it. So on the professional side, it could have been they put their neck out. They spent those extra hours in the office and it didn't get recognized. They didn't get the promotion that they wanted. And as a result, they said, forget it. Like, I'm just going to put my head down and just do the basics of what's required of me. I'm not necessarily going to do anything wrong or, but I'm not going to go above and beyond. Or personally, they might say it's not worth it because they might say, I have 2 little kids at home. So, if I'm going to a work day and going to work every day and kind of going above and beyond, and then I say, I can't really sacrifice it with my kids anymore. I need to be at home, or I need to make more time for my own kind of self-care or maybe working out more. And then as a result, I say, you know what, I'm going to just put some boundaries on work. I'm really just going to focus on doing what I know I need to do because it's not worth sacrificing those things in my personal life anymore. There's also this feeling of like that these quiet quitters feel kind of disposable. They feel like, if a recession hits, my company doesn't really care that much about me. I feel like I could be let go. Even if you are a good employee, you just get that sense that my job, I don't really know if my job is secure. So what's the point? What's the point, again, of kind of going above and beyond? this I kind of already said, but where they feel like, what's the point? Because I have been trying, I have been overextending myself, I have been working extra hours, I have been taking on more than what my job description entails, or more than what my manager told me that I would have to do for this job. And I've been overcommitting, and I have nothing really to show for it. I have never gotten that pay increase. I haven't gotten that promotion, or maybe they just haven't gotten recognition, just proper recognition or appreciation for what they've been doing. And then as a result, there's this feeling of being like disrespected or, underappreciated and undervalued within the organization. This was a quote, that I heard in one of the videos, and the guy said, look, I'm not going to kill myself over a job that doesn't care about me as a person. And a lot of people feel that way. And it doesn't mean that companies are intending that, but this is, and I hear this with clients all the time too. Curious to hear how many of you have experienced quiet quitting firsthand, and would love to have you share a bit about that in the chat. Maybe where a colleague, or you have somebody you've kind of noticed somebody that seems to be quiet quitting. Would love to have you share that in the chat here. Misty, I just read your I'm guilty of saying it late when I should be staying home. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between just setting boundaries and quiet quitting, which are two different things. 100% slide. I'm just reading some of the, I like reading I personally think Americans are tired. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's populating too quick, and then I can't read everything. I think a lot of it is that the job people have isn't the job that was sold to them by college. Absolutely. That's so much of this is that expectations. People are coming into jobs with certain expectations. They're not having those expectations be met, and that's creating a lot of animosity. Okay, keep those. I love reading the comments. So, all right. So on this whole boundary thing, this one drives me crazy, because I am a huge proponent. I'm all about workplace well-being. I'm pretty relentless in my own life about setting my own boundaries between work and life. And I love what I do. So I absolutely believe that people should be setting boundaries. There is a difference between quiet quitters who are more mentally checked out and empowered employees who are creating boundaries for themselves. There's nothing wrong with the quiet quitters, but there's kind of, you want to make sure that you understand the difference. So on the quiet quitting side, you have people that do have a bit of this feeling like, I just don't care anymore. I'm a bit resigned. I can either quit or stay, but it's a different type of mentality. There's kind of this lack of loyalty to the organization already, because, again, they're more so on that spectrum of more so going out the door. They might not trust leadership. These aren't necessarily all the qualities of a quiet quitter, but these are some of the things that might be happening in the back of a quiet quitter's mind. Don't trust leadership. I came here, I'm not doing what I was supposed to be doing. The leaders don't really seem to care about me as a person. Maybe they don't really believe that the organization is going to prioritize retaining employees when the recession comes. So there's this feeling of like, I don't know if I really kind of trust leadership. And there's just a little bit of that cynical mindset in this group. And they really could quit at any time. There's no real attachment to the work or the organization. This is distinct from empowered employees, which is a group that I feel like this is what we're really aiming for, is to have empowered employees who are creating boundaries for themselves. That's something that is a great thing to be doing. So we definitely don't want to be getting upset with quiet quitters for creating boundaries that enable them to have more work-life balance. I think that is something that is completely okay that they're doing, and should be something, if anything, that's almost like commended that they're doing. But empowered employees are like a different group. They don't really have any intention to quit. they are intentionally creating balance in their lives, not necessarily because they're mad at work or because they're mad at their manager or anything. They just are starting to see, like, my well-being matters, creating boundaries really matters. It really helps me be more productive. These people, maybe they still end their day at 5 or 6. I recommend that all organizations strive to have employees leaving their work day as close to an 8-hour day as possible, or ending their work day, I should say, or leaving the office is what I meant. But that they're just highly productive during those hours that they work. These people also like feel good about their work and feel good about their employer. They don't necessarily have that kind of checked out mentality. And they don't really have an intention to quit. So you want to be careful, because what you don't want to happen is that you notice that, Sally on your team is starting to set boundaries for herself because she realizes that she wants to get home to cook dinner for her family, or she wants to make time for a yoga class right after work. And then you start to see somebody setting those boundaries, and then you think that person might be quiet quitting. This is where you have to really start to get curious about what's going on with people, because that should be commended. If you have somebody who is highly productive during the day, who seems to really enjoy their work and is spreading good vibes around the organizations and setting boundaries for themselves, that's a great thing. So setting boundaries does not equate to being a quiet quitter. So that's just so important to note. These are some of like the groups that I started to distinguish. This is kind of my classification. Again, this isn't some like scientific version, scientific breakdown. But when I started to like hear the stories of quiet quitters, and I do a lot of employee interviews and stuff, so that's part of where this comes from too. To me, these people fall into these 4 groups. So on the far left, you've got burned out people. Okay, so when people have reached their max, where they've overcommitted for an extended period of time, where they have chronic stress that's due to workload, high job demands, and they're burned out, they might say to themselves that, they're thinking, I gotta just leave. I can't do this anymore. And instead of leaving, they say, you know what? Let me just not get burned out anymore. Let me just stop. Let me just put these really high, really strict boundaries. Let me just do the basics. I need to get myself back to kind of a place of balance. So some of the people have just reached this point of burnout, and that causes them to kind of quiet quit. Then you've got what I call the angry. You've got employees that are really angry that maybe they didn't get the promotion that they wanted, or they have been committing or going above and beyond without any kind of acknowledgement, or and there is like maybe something that happened, or maybe they were treated unfairly, or something happened that really caused like an anger, and as a result they're like, well, I hate to say F you, but there's like this mentality of like, well, forget it then. I'm no longer doing that. And there's this sense of like animosity. But again, mostly that has come from something that happened within the organization that you need to you kind of need to figure out what that was that caused that emotion. Then there's like the adventure seekers. And I think this is definitely more common in those younger generations that are saying, I want to live life. I want to be hiking on the weekends. I want to be making time. And they're putting these boundaries, and they're saying, hey, work is just work, and it's a means to an end. I do just want a paycheck, and I want to like live my life, and I want to have all these aspects of balance. I want to have time for, going out for drinks with my friends, and I want to just like really live my life, and work is just the means to an end. Then the board is the last category. These are the people that really have no interest in the nature of work themselves. So they're showing up to work. They are not, finding any sense of connection to the work that they're doing. They don't feel like it uses their like natural talents. They're just, they're kind of just feeling the sense of boredom. And that consistent feeling of being bored in one's work causes them to say, there's no reason for me to do more than what's expected of me, because I just have no interest in it. So they're just showing up, doing the bare minimum, and then that's it. So I hope that kind of helps, like, break down this group a bit more and kind of look at the specifics. Okay, let's see. So I want to just mention quickly, like, what it's not. So Kevin O'Leary, who I am not a big fan of, if I'm honest, there was a video that he had about basically saying that quiet quitters don't work for me, because if you are the kind of person that clocks out at 5 p.m. and, you don't, and you want to, and he even says this in his video, he says, if you're the kind of person who wants balance, who wants, to make it to your kid's soccer game, then you don't work for me, because I look for the hard workers. He, to me, represents the epitome of a very old school mentality that is at the heart of a lot of the trends that we're seeing. That's at the heart of a lot of the, more toxic cultures. It's more that mentality that it stems from. Quiet quitting is, first of all, not actually quitting. And it's not really laziness or a sense of entitlement. It's from some of the things that I mentioned before. This is not to say that, like, I'm sure there's employees within any organization that are lazy and maybe do have some sense of entitlement, but that is not what defines this group of quiet quitters. And laziness is not really what's at the source of quiet quitting. It's also not a fireable offense. So I know lawyers who are looking into this more, trying to figure, companies are trying to figure out if they can, like, actually fire people based on certain behaviors. And now this is being called quiet firing as a result. It really isn't a fireable offense. And I'm putting this note below this. Please do not use quiet quitting as an excuse to downsize, because you're going to miss out on a bigger lesson to be learned about people and your culture. Okay, so if you're seeing quiet quitting, you have to get interested in what's happening at the cultural level and get interested in people's lives, and not be thinking that this is just an opportunity to start shedding kind of the weight and cutting a bunch of people. So now getting to the root causes. I think I'm a little behind my schedule, so I'm going to speed up here. So who really needs to be held accountable for this? So I really want to see your answer to this question. I posted something on LinkedIn and it was interesting because this whole topic came up. So is this a two-way street? Meaning, is it up to the employee or the employer to make changes, or both? Is it a two-way street? And whose fault is it that employees are quiet quitting, or is it anyone's fault? I'm curious to see what your answer to that would be. What do you think? Do you think it's more on the employee to take responsibility for themselves and, and kind of their own satisfaction at work? Or do you feel like it's more on the employer to change things in order to make employees more engaged and satisfied? I'm just going to wait a second just to see some of the answers here on that one. It's the work culture, which comes from the top, Aubrey said. The CEO, yep, love that. Top level leadership, okay, great. Yeah, and 80%, 20%. I actually really like that ratio, because I think that's probably a pretty accurate reflection of it. Okay, so it sounds like you guys are more of the it's a complex question. An employee can only, yes. Yeah, so it's absolutely a two-way street. My kind of answer to this is that it's a two-way street, but with like a triple lane highway on the side of the employer. Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. So now this is kind of where psychological safety comes in, because like psychological safety can really take the quiet out of quiet quitting, meaning that, a lot of people will say, well, it's really on the employee to just say what's going on with them and just be honest and not be quiet about it. It's not fair. I've heard a lot of people say it's not fair as a manager that an employee never told me that this was happening with them. How am I supposed to know, right? But this is where psychological safety comes in, because if there isn't a culture on the organizational level and at the team level, right? Because sometimes companies can do a decent job at saying, hey, we care about your well-being, we care about what you have to say, and then every manager has a different kind of culture on their team. Psychological safety has to exist at the local level, right? So a manager has to foster this sense of psychological safety, meaning that just feeling like they're having open dialogue. There's the ability to disagree with the manager. You can share what's going on with you personally, professionally. That's what psychological safety means. So if there is a feeling of psychological safety, that helps take the kind of that quietness out of quiet quitting. Now all of a sudden people can open up about what they're dealing with. So psychological safety is defined as it's the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And employers must then create environments that encourage genuine curiosity, meaningful questions, and authentic dialogue. So I put all those there for a reason, that it's genuine curiosity, being genuinely curious and what's going on with people, what's going on in their lives, asking meaningful questions. I'm not a big fan of it just being like, how are you? I've heard that a lot in like advice. Just check in with your employees, ask them how they are. You've got to ask meaningful questions that opens up the dialogue with employees and creates an authentic dialogue. So, my animations didn't work the way I wanted to, but here. So think about it this way. If you've got an unhappy employee that might be either burned out or kind of disgruntled from some other, for some other reasons, these are the options that they have. They can either stay and continue to suffer, keep overextending themselves, keep being that committed person that you all want to see, the person that's going above and beyond, yet be like suffering. Or they can quiet quit, where they take it back a notch and they say, I can't do that anymore because I'm way too burned out. It's not sustainable. So I'm taking a step back. I'm not going to go above and beyond anymore. Or they can actually quit, or they can speak up. But there's a kind of another option here. There we go. Sorry, my animations aren't the best. But you cannot rely on the speaking up part because it's unrealistic. If you really want to tackle this, just waiting for your employees to speak up, that's never going to happen. Instead, what you then have to shift to is, what are the root causes of all this? What is at the root of the burnout? What is at the root of this like unhappiness or this sense of resentment or this feeling of being mentally checked out or feeling like it's all not worth it? These are what's at the root of it. So these are 6 of the root causes of burnout, and that are also what I call the barriers to workplace well-being. These are not just random 6 things that I've thrown up on a screen. These have been echoed from like the top researchers on burnout in Gallup, McKinsey, a whole variety of places that I've a whole variety of sources that I've read. So the feelings of burnout and this dissatisfaction is coming from not feeling that you have control over your job, meaning that you're kind of micromanaged. You don't have this feeling of like being able to dictate how you work, when you work, having high job demands, just way too much expected of you, things that have been added to your list of expectations that weren't part of the original, plan of what you signed up for, just long hours, lack of support, meaning, your manager's kind of too busy doing a million things or not getting support from colleagues when you reach out for help, a lack of fairness. So feeling like somebody else got the promotion before I did, or that I was on a group call with my team members, and a comment was made to me that was completely uncalled for or unfair and caused me to shut down, or a feeling of job insecurity. So just feeling that fear that you might be laid off, or feeling like, oh, I haven't been recognized lately. So as a result, I'm not sure if my company really values me and if I am really here to stay or not. Those are all at the root of basically all issues when it comes to when you think about all these trends that we're seeing. I'm gonna bring them up again. I love the way Adam Grant said this. He said, quiet quitting isn't a sign of individual laziness. It's a symptom of organizational dysfunction. Doing the bare minimum is a common response to abusive bosses, BS jobs, and poor pay. When they don't feel cared about, people will eventually stop caring. So these are the 6 again. They are at the heart of the entire quiet quitting revolution. I can tell you that. These are all tied to all the elements of toxic culture. If you take the time to understand each of these 6, this will address the root cause of all of the retention issues that we're seeing. So this isn't the end of the presentation, but this is about putting the end to the trend. So how do you create an environment of psychological safety and well-being? So first, I think the first step is we all have to kind of take a step back and think about, what does an actual ideal employee sound like? What does an ideal culture look like or sound like? Please type that in the chat. What does an ideal employee really sound like to you? And if your company is truly thriving, if you had employees that were really engaged in their work, what does that culture look like and sound like? There is a quiet firing term, Brian. Yeah. So go ahead and push it. We don't have much time, so I'm not going to wait for it, but would love to hear your thoughts on that. So in terms of what we're aiming for, so here's kind of what we're aiming for according to me. So the ideal employee is really someone who's empowered, who feels like they're in the driver's seat of their life. Sorry, that's supposed to say life. It's somebody who's engaged in their work, really loves the work they do on a daily basis, and has this commitment to the organization, wants to make the company a better place, helps their fellow employees, wants to stay at the organization for a long time. They want to grow there, and they want to help the organization grow. These are the kinds of employees that almost see themselves as almost like an owner in the company. And the ideal employee also has high well-being and maintains great work-life balance, because when you have employees that have a sense of balance, they don't get that animosity towards work, and they get energy from other areas of their life that then they bring back into the workplace. This then creates the ideal culture, because well-being becomes this core value of the culture, and it really becomes part of the entire employee life cycle. So to me, that's such a big part of creating the most healthy cultures out there, is really putting well-being at the center as a core value. And this is what employees are looking for in terms of talent that you're trying to attract. They're looking for well-being to not just be a program, but to be a core value of the company. An ideal culture also is where leaders are setting a positive example by maintaining balance in their own life, and then behave and communicate in ways that build trust. An ideal culture is where employees feel that they're cared for, that their whole life, their future matters, where's that sense of psychological safety where they can share what's going on with them. And where people genuinely enjoy one another and support each other in their work, and they want each other to succeed and openly communicate, which I've already said that one. Okay, so how do we get there? Well, the good news is actually stop trying to figure out quiet quitting and focus on the bigger picture. So you actually don't even really need to know everything I just said. Instead, it needs to be more about, how do I focus on the bigger picture of what's happening? How do I really create a comprehensive well-being strategy, make well-being a core part of our culture, as opposed to trying to keep up with the trends? because this is really a well-being revolution that we're in. This is something that's here to stay. And so we've got to kind of zoom out a bit and see the bigger picture and not have it be like, well, how do I solve quiet quitting? How do I just fix, kind of fix this problem or that? It's more about taking a step back. So this is what I call like the life-work balance movement. What we're seeing is that work is no longer in the driver's seat. And this is a good thing, by the way. Life is coming first. This can actually empower our cultures by having employees that really respect all aspects of their life and come to work energized because they have real balance. So this is a life-work balance movement, I call it. Work is no longer in the driver's seat. There's an appreciation for all aspects of life. People are seeking that autonomy, that sense of empowerment, that feeling like they're in control of their life and their circumstances, where they have respect for their time. There's a search for meaning and purpose, the belief that work should have a positive influence on their life and not a negative. It's this anti-hustle culture, and they just want to be cared about as a person. To me, this is all such a good thing. This is showing that we are quiet quitting, and all these other trends that we're seeing are indications that we're actually evolving as a society. So first taking on that perspective that, wow, this is just like a life-work balance movement. These are all signs that employees and people are just saying, hey, my life matters. I want to make sure that I'm only getting I'm getting the positive aspects of work, that I'm not burning myself out, that I have time for my family, that I have flexibility. So acknowledging the bigger picture is the first step. Then put all your energy on really developing a workplace well-being strategy, not just trying to bring in the next program or perk or quick solution, but taking a step back with your leadership team and saying, what does it take to develop a real workplace well-being strategy? So I'll tell you that all of this begins, and this is what I work with all my clients. One of the first things I do with them is I help them measure well-being properly. If you want to figure out who the quiet quitters are, or how many there are within your organization, or what's causing the lack of engagement, you have to measure well-being the right way. This means understanding how to measure well-being at the individual level, understanding what elements of the culture are impacting employee well-being, and measuring engagement. But the key is also being able to not just measure and get insights on the whole organization, but to distill it down by work group, to understand, how is Tommy's team doing? How is Jim's team doing? How is Sarah's team doing? Does it look like there might be, people who are really disengaged or struggling with their well-being on this team? If you can measure well-being properly across the organization and measure it locally, that will start to help you uncover, where are the quiet quitters potentially? What is going on in that mental state? So it really all starts with measuring properly. Now, here's 10 actions that you can work on immediately. Measuring is a quite a big undertaking, but aside from just getting your leadership team together and creating your strategy, here's some of the things you can start with. First of all, stick to a 40 to 45 hour work week. Anything beyond 45 hours, people are not productive. They are not bringing their best selves to work. The second you start expecting people to be in the office or at their desk for more than this amount of time, that's where people start to get resentful. They don't like when the fact they can't pick up their kids from work, they can't get to their yoga class, they can't make time for the other things that are important to their life. There is no reason why we should be working more than an 8 to 9 hour day tops. And those boundaries force people to be way more productive in the hours that they actually are working. Make sure employees really know what's expected of them, and not just where you're telling them, but having a conversation and really going through those things. And as a manager, making sure that you're clear of really, what do you expect of them? Are you expecting too much? And are you clear about what's important? Evaluate and improve performance metrics. Often just getting things done and being at your desk or working a number of X number of hours becomes a performance metric. Those are not performance metrics. You have to really think about what makes sense for every particular job. What are the real performance metrics? And don't get lazy and just assume that, that we're just deciding performance is whoever's staying at their desk for longer or just gets things done faster, because those aren't real performance metrics. Help every employee see the connection between what they do and the bigger picture or purpose or mission of the company. It could be their bigger picture in their own life, their own aspirations, or it could be the mission of the company, but they've got to see that connection to a bigger picture. Make sure their career path is clear and have conversations about the future. That helps them feel like their job is more secure. Know exactly what work-life balance looks like for each employee. Ask them that question. What does work-life balance look like for you? What, if you were to envision, a perfect work-life balance, what does that sound like? For every employee, it's different. It's different for me because I have kids. It's completely different for my sister who doesn't and lives the single life in Manhattan. So work-life balance looks very different for everybody. Have well-being and empowerment meetings. I have a template I can send you for this, which I'll mention on the next slide. Train your manager. I would say any money you're going to invest in any kind of perk should probably just go to training your managers to be people managers. They are some of the most burned out people within any organization, and they are have the need more training and support than anybody. Acknowledge inflation. Acknowledge the financial struggles that people are going through. Employees, can get can create a lot of kind of that animosity when people just feel like this isn't even getting acknowledged and their pay is not being taken into consideration. And have the C-suite announce these things. So if you're going to start making changes in any of these things, your CEO should have a company-wide meeting where they say, hey, we're going to start to reduce the number of hours. We want to get strict about the number of hours we work each week. We want to get clear about what's expected of you. Have an announcement that says, hey, we're going to focus on well-being, and here are some of the things that we're going to do. So the whole company starts to feel like the organization is shifting directions. So the bottom line is that you need to know about the life of every single one of your employees. Managers should know about every single person that's kind of that they're working with. I'll leave you with some resources here, and then I don't know if we can stay on for a couple extra minutes if we want to save time for some questions, but you can book a call with me directly on my site, workplacewellbeingadvisors.com. If you are interested in creating a real workplace well-being strategy, I'd be happy to just walk you through the basic steps for doing that and what that entails. I also have a workplace well-being snapshot assessment, which I think we're going to pop that in the chat here. Michelle, I don't know if you're still on and can do that, but on my site, there's also a workplace well-being snapshot assessment. What that'll do is give you just a score on kind of what your perceived state of well-being is within your organization. And then I also have something that's called a well-being discussion and meeting guide, which if you reach out to me, I can email that to you, which gives you a set of questions that your managers can ask to open up the dialogue with employees and kind of create that psychological safety. So I am going to see if I can actually, I don't know if I can put it in the chat, but reach out to me. So if we are not able to put those links in the chat, I'll, feel free to just email me directly and I can send you some of those links, or you can go to my website, which is workplacewellbeingadvisors.com, and also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So thank you all so much, especially if you guys have stayed for the whole hour. I know that's a lot of information. And thank you for your attention and all the comments that you put in the chat. Really appreciate it. So is there any questions? And Michelle, I don't know if we are able to stay on any longer to take questions. Just let me know.
So this is Karina, and we can definitely stay on to answer at least one or two questions. The first one I see here is, well, actually, before I get to that, because I see a lot of questions coming in about those resource links. So the resource links have been dropped into the attendee chat. They are also in your resource widget that's on your audience dashboard. So all that will be there, including the TikTok with Veronica and also the Kevin O'Leary video, if anyone's looking for that. So now let's get into the Q&A. The first question I see is, in your research, have you found a link between quiet quitters and an increase in unsafe work performance / behaviors?
Yeah, so thanks, Anna. So yeah, there's actually there's a lot of research. I would say I haven't seen it so much with quiet quitters specifically, but there is Gallup research about the connection between engagement and safety. So if you think about it, if you think about even like a factory worker or somebody who's working, just to make it a more straightforward example, like somebody who's operating machinery or something that actually is a pretty unsafe environment, or say maybe works in construction, if that person is less engaged, which is in essence what a quiet quitter is, they're not paying attention as much to things. They don't have as much care to do things the right way, right? And as a result, that does make things less safe. So there is research on the connection between safety incidences and engagement, which kind of, goes back in time. Like I said, not just necessarily quiet quitting. But again, I think the big thing about that is that you don't want to think, oh, then we have to fire those people. You have to understand what's going on, like what's going on with them. Are they sad? Are they angry? Are they frustrated? And can we fix it? Because the other thing I'll say is that some people who are really actively disengaged, meaning like they have that anger or like a negative emotion associated with work, that emotion can actually get channeled in the positive, and flipped to something positive when you address their issue. So like these quiet quitters or people who are less engaged, if you can figure out what's going on with them and actually solve some of their problems or relieve like whatever it is that's kind of bothering them, or address the elements of toxic culture, all of a sudden they're like, wow, my manager went above and beyond. My manager took the time to have conversations with me. And then it flipped. Then they go from being an actively disengaged employee to an engaged one, because now that emotion that was negative has turned into a positive one. All right, sorry, that was a much too long of an answer. Is there any other questions there in the chat, Karina?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. How do you deal with picking up the slack of coworkers who are in the quiet quitting stage?
Well, I think it kind of comes back to the same thing in terms of, I guess, it is kind of challenging when it's, an employee who kind of recognizes that something's happening with their fellow employee, and that employee maybe is in that quiet quitting. But it's just like anything else, like first kind of coming from this place of genuine curiosity and empathy. And I tend to use curiosity over empathy, because I think sometimes people think, oh, we have to care about everybody's feelings all the time, and that frustrates people. But if you're curious about what's going on with people, like, what happened to that person that caused them to check out, and you ask some of the right questions, which that's in my template, which I, like I said, I can send to you guys, but you ask them some of the questions, like what is stressing you out? Are you not getting the life, like, are you not having that balance in life that you want? Or did anything happen? Or are you not getting the support that you need? Or is there anything I can do to help? But just going to lunch with them, having a coffee, just taking the time to build some relationships to figure out what's going on. As like a fellow employee, I would say that that's taking the high road of just like trying to figure out like what's going on and getting to the root of it. But this is where it really does come down to the managers, understanding what's going on and taking that interest as a managers, because it really shouldn't be on the employee to kind of like, figure things out and pick up the slack. But I think as an employee, making sure that then you're clear on this is what's expected of me. I'm not necessarily going to be taking on what's expected of another person. And I think it's okay to be clear about that and have that conversation, you know, with managers, saying that, hey, I can't do X, Y, and Z. That's really somebody else's role, because I'm really focused on the things that are my priorities, the things that I know that I need to, the performance metrics that I need to hit. So just being honest about that with your manager, that these are the things I know is expected of me, and and I'm setting my own boundaries. I think that that's perfectly healthy to have a conversation like that. Any other ones, Karina?
I think that was pretty much all of them. Thank you so much, everyone in the audience, for participating today. Thanks so much, Danielle, for being here. And I just want to give one last big thank you to our sponsor for today's session, Avetta. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Karina.